You cannot live in America on $500 a month. I kid you not, I could not get a job anywhere. Like I applied, and I was so overqualified for everything. God, I am out of money. I have no gas in my tank. I have no food. And people, without knowing my need, would give me food. Hi, today I want to tell you about how I spent the last 4+ years without a paycheck and how God provided for my rent, provided for my student loans, all of my living expenses. So let's go back to 2018. I had just finished grad school and I was looking at awesome job opportunities in my field, government, nonprofit stuff, and I just didn't feel peace about any of it. And I also knew I was pretty burned out and needed a change of pace. So I was looking to get out of town and just do something totally different. And then one day this opportunity presented itself to me. I had an opportunity to go work for this international ministry. I would get to interface with business and government leaders and do ministry stuff. I'd still be doing nonprofit administration, but it would be for a ministry. But the catch was there would be no paycheck. Everyone that's a part of this particular ministry raises their own financial support. We build partnerships with churches, local communities who value the work we're doing, and they financially contribute. They also pray for the work we're doing. And so I knew this was the direction God was taking me, and yet I was like, this doesn't make sense because I had student loans. I had just gone through 6 years of college, and I'm like, God, this is the direction you want me to go? And yet I knew it was God. Also, side note, I needed to be taken down a notch or two. I was pretty snooty at this point and just way too reliant on myself for all things in life. Like I really, at this point in my life, I just thought I was awesome and so capable. And gosh, the last 4 or 5 years, God has just taught me so much about relying on Him for my daily bread and relying on Him for life itself. So I decided to take this position going with this international ministry, and they taught us how to raise support. I went through a training process with this ministry. It was a 6-month training program before you officially go on board as staff with them. And I went through that process, and then I was really praying about, okay, God, I finished the 6-month training process. Do I go on board full-time with this ministry or not? And some people in my life that really love me and are dear to me basically told me, you need to stop what you're doing and get a job and pay off your student loans, and then after you're debt free, go do this other thing. And it was kind of confusing because one person had even told me, I feel like God's telling me you should get a job and pay off your loans first. And I was looking at different jobs, and I kid you not, I could not get a job anywhere. Like I applied, and I was so overqualified for everything. My resume looked really good, and yet the only place that would interview me was Cracker Barrel. And I'm like, God, I can't get a job anywhere. And over time, I just had an epiphany, like, it's because I'm not supposed to get a normal job. Like God sent me to this ministry and I'm supposed to go on staff with them, even though I have student loans and bills to pay. So I took a leap of faith and I said, okay, God, if you will provide supporters who will help me so that my monthly needs are met, I will go on staff with this ministry, even though they don't give a paycheck. And so one day I was sitting down with someone for lunch, and they put a check in front of me, and they said, this is the amount that we are going to give to you every month for the next 12 months, and then we are going to reconsider after 12 months. And they ended up supporting me the last 5 years. But I looked at the amount on that check, and it was the exact amount of my monthly loan payment, like to the dollar. It was exactly how much I was paying for my student loans at the time. And it was like a light bulb moment, like, okay, God, I see you. I have no money here, but the first person that comes forward to support me is going to give me the exact amount that I have to pay in student loans every month. So even though I didn't have many supporters, in fact, the whole time I was working for this ministry, the maximum amount of guaranteed support I have had every month was probably like $600. Maybe a little more than that, but most of the time, the only guaranteed support I had was like $500 a month. And so I said, yes, God, you provided the first supporter, so I'm going to jump into this ministry stuff. And God took me to the nations. It was a whirlwind of an experience. Every single month was a step of faith. I never knew where my provision was going to come from because, guys, I only knew where $500 a month was going to come from. But as all of you know, you cannot live in America on $500 a month. I had rent, I had student loans, I had, the food, the gas, the normal stuff going on. Like, I cannot do $500 a month. And yet I knew that I knew that I knew, even when I stressed out, I still knew God will make a way. And what's really funny is right before I started on with this ministry, I got a prophetic word from someone, and they said to me, I remember it was like it was yesterday, they said to me, I see God assigning angels to you, and these angels are actually assigned to your bank account, and you're gonna be looking at your bank account and thinking like, oh my gosh, I only have a couple dollars left, or it looks like it's about to go into the negative, and I just see angels dropping money in your account. God is assigning angels to you. And I didn't think much about that prophetic word until I was in a position where it started happening. I'm just like, I have no money. And I watched God 1,000 times over provide for me. I cannot tell you how many times I had a bill due the next day, and then someone would just randomly send me a donation on Venmo or Cash App. And I was like, God, that's exactly what I needed for this bill, but I didn't tell a soul that I needed that money. There's this one lady, you know who you are, because I tell you, you are so spirit-led with your giving. There is this one lady who, she would just give at different times. It wasn't like a set month, set date, set time, but every single time she gave me money, it was right when I had a need. It's like, oh, I have rent due tomorrow. Oh, my student loans are due in a couple days. I have no money for that. And out of nowhere, I would get a notification on my phone and I would check it. And it was this lady sending me several $100s for whatever I had a need of. And it's hilarious because you can't make this stuff up. Like, if I went into this journey as an atheist, I would no longer be allowed to be an atheist because it is mathematically improbable the number of times I had a bill due in the next day or two, and then someone so strategically and timely drops money into my account again and again and again, every single month for 4 to 5 years. I was with this ministry probably 4.5 years, but I would say at least 4 of those years I didn't have a paycheck of any kind. It was just, okay, God, I am signing up to do this work that you have called me to, and this is the financial model that they run off of. There's no paycheck, so I'm just trusting you to be my provision. In fact, one time in the middle of all this, I had a dream, and God spoke to me in my dream and said, you have foregone a paycheck to serve me in this capacity. Let people give to you, let people bless you. And I woke up and I'm like, okay, God wants me to receive blessings from other people, because it's not just for me, it's also their reward, because they are receiving an inheritance from all the work I'm doing, since they are sowing with their prayers and finances. It is a collective, we are going after the nations together. So I had to learn to start receiving, and that was really, really, really hard for me, because I'm kind of like a do-it-yourself, make your own ends meet kind of person, and having to depend on God and other people was so hard. Just a moment of silence for all the times when I felt so insecure about receiving money from other people. Okay, moment of silence over. But you get the point. I'm sure a lot of you are like that. It's like, I don't want to depend on other people for what I know I can do for myself. And yet I know I've been working hard for God's kingdom. I know I've been sharing the gospel. I know that the nonprofit administration, the event planning and things I was doing for this ministry, I know that was blessing people. I know I started my YouTube channel to hopefully bless and inspire people, and that's never given me a penny. Like, I know I'm doing all these things to say yes to God that don't give me money. And so at the end of the day, God is a rewarder of those who honor him and who give their best to him. And so this is how God has chosen to provide for me for the last 4 years. So let me tell you about some of the ways God provided along the way. Right before I left to go to this ministry, I was driving across the country and my car was a clunker. I needed a new car. I had no money for a new car. And then what do you know? A couple weeks before I leave, a family member gives me a car, and it has been the perfect car for me over the last 4 or 5 years. You know who you are. God bless you for doing that. Also, I needed a work laptop, and the ministry I worked for gave me a laptop, a super, super nice laptop. There have been so many times where I needed new work clothes or I needed to get my hair done, and people would just pay for it. And again, it's like it would bring up insecurities in me, like, God, I have some great education, great resume. I can go out and get a fine job. And yet God had me in this season of learning how to receive and learning how to let Him provide for my every need. So people would be like, here's $500 to go shopping, or hey, I want to pay for you to get your hair done. There were times I didn't have food. Don't get me wrong, I have never gone without food, but there are specific times where I remember, God, I am out of money, I have no gas in my tank, I have no food, and people, without knowing my need, would give me food. You know, if it came down to it and God didn't come through, of course I would ask people like, hey, can you give me some food? But it never came to that point because I knew God is going to provide for my needs. He told me He's assigning angels to my bank account. God told me that as I am saying yes to serving this ministry, God is going to take care of my needs. So God is my daily bread. He is my manna in the wilderness. He is my source of provision. There was this one time I was making the decision to really commit to working with this ministry, and I was driving across the country to go rejoin my team there, and I barely had any money in my account, like dollars, and I don't remember if I had enough gas to get me there or not. I'm pretty sure some of the gas that I paid for to get across the country, I put on a credit card, and I showed up and I had no food, no money, nothing. And right when I got there, my roommates were like, hey, we have all this food left over from blah, 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 and it needs to get eaten. So please help us eat it. It was a fridge full of food. And I just knew this is God's provision for me. Like time and time again, such humbling experiences, but constant testimonies, multiple times a month, constant testimonies where God came through for me in the craziest circumstances. And like, I trust Him more than I did before. And I still struggle with things financially. You know, we're still being made more and more into the likeness of Christ, but I have a track record with God. And I know that what He did in me over the last 4 to 5 years, He can do again in me. He can also do through other people. And I also know this. There are many ways that God provides for our life, and every season is different. And some people, God does things differently. I was doing paycheck stuff before, and then I was in a season of just depending on God for my finances. Now I'm on a paycheck, but I'm also praying about wealth creation next. I'm pretty entrepreneurial, and I'm like, Lord, teach me how to make money. There are so many ways that God can provide, and we just don't need to set limits to it. Even Jesus Himself, He was a carpenter, but then when He was traveling doing ministry, the women that would travel with Him, they were supporting His ministry out of their own pockets. So there's just so many different ways God can provide. What's really cool is in the midst of having hardly any money, God really taught me about stewarding money. And I remember I went to one of my team leaders. I was like, listen, I'm broke. Like, I have no money. I'm struggling month after month to pay rent, and I feel like I'm stewarding my money well, but I'm just not able to make ends meet. And my team leader started sharing with me a model that had really worked for them. They said that God had put it on their heart to live off of 80% of their monthly income and to tithe on 10% and to save 10%. And I said, I don't know how to do that because I can't even live off of 100%. And I said, I give in the offering, but I don't tithe. At that point, I only saw tithing as legalism. I saw it as religiosity. I didn't see it as an actual godly principle. And listen, it really is not about the specific amount that you give. It's about God having the first of everything that comes in, and about you recognizing with your money that God is the source. So we're giving back to Him. But tithing to me was just a point of legalism. And I was like, I don't want to tithe. That just seems like the devil. But I just kept thinking, like, My team leader said, test God at his word, put it into practice, try tithing, try setting aside money and saving, and see if that changes your financial situation. And so I said, okay, God, I'm going to put you to the test. I am not able to make ends meet, but I'm going to put you to the test. I'm going to try tithing. I'm going to try saving, and we'll see how it works. And so even though I had barely any money, I started giving to God 10% of my money every month, and I started saving 10% every month. And it wasn't like it was an immediate turnaround, but yet there was a shift. Over time, as I look back, I realized my financial situation started to change as I started putting God first. I wasn't waiting and giving sporadically, like, no, off the top of all money coming in, I'm giving to God, and I'm also setting aside money for a rainy day. And that has helped me because there's times I have doctor's bills or things that come up, or maybe my support has been low 1 month, and so I'm needing to revert back to that savings, but it has been a lifesaver. So even when I made hardly any money at all, God taught me how to steward money. And I know that what he taught me to do with little, I can do with great as well. So God has been my source all along, but these last 4 or 5 years have really proven it. Let me tell you the outcomes. I am no longer with this ministry. I have just stepped back into a normal paycheck kind of role. But as of a couple months ago, I am 100% debt-free. I also have a little savings account that I have built up, and I am saving up some money to get my own place. Side note, I have had 1,001 roommates over the last 5 years. Whew, what a journey it has been. Working with this international ministry, even though I never got a paycheck, it gave me a heart for the nations. It wrecked me for the nations, and it set the course of my life. I realized that God is calling me to international work. And had I not said yes to going to serve this ministry, I would have never seen what I was really called to in my life. Because God has called me to people groups that are all over the world. And the value of knowing my calling and of encountering these people groups far surpasses the paychecks that I could have made had I gotten a conventional job and stayed here. And I just want to remind you, like, God sets a track record with us over time. If he did it before, he can do it again. So as I've seen his faithfulness in finances, I know he'll continue to provide in finances. As I've seen his faithfulness in finances, it gives me faith that God will provide in relationships and family stuff and job stuff and ministry stuff. It's like this faith in this area lends itself to other areas. So my faith has really grown. It's like, God, you are my source for all things. You're my source for my health. You're my source. You'll provide my spouse one day. Like, you are my source for all things. I just want to close out this video by praying for you guys. Some of you may be in a tight spot financially, or some of you may be stepping into a season where you are taking major risks for Jesus. And so I just want to pray for you. It is so worth any sacrifice. Following God, it's worth all the sacrifice. So God, I thank you for those who are listening to this video who are in the valley of decisions. They have choices to make. And I thank you that they will make decisions based on what you give them peace for, and that they will be willing to step into the unknown and to recognize that you will take care of them every step of the way. God, life with you is a journey, it's an adventure. Sometimes it feels scary, but we know you are our good shepherd, and we always have more than enough. If you take care of the birds of the air and the flowers of the field, certainly you will take care of your children. So I bless those who are listening, and I thank you for just increasing their faith to believe for the impossible. And I thank you for teaching them the financial principles that you've been teaching me. Show us how to steward our money and show us how to live lives of great faith. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, if you like this video, thanks for giving me a thumbs up and subscribing. And if you want to hear more content, just follow my channel. If you have any video recommendations for me, let me know. Talk to you soon. Love you guys.